Alright, hello and welcome. I'm the Lunatic Gamer, Lunacy, and I'm going to go over some details here for a quick, easy little tutorial in Photoshop um, in order to do some animations and pixel art for emotes in Twitch, as well as other functions and purposes you can use on your streaming. So, if you're making emotes specifically, we'll keep it simple. You generally want to go with 112 by 112 pixels, so make sure you have your pixels per inch selected here in the resolutions. Get your height and width there. And then always make your backgrounds transparent. That's very important for emotes in particular, and for a lot of the things, just to get that kind of clean, crisp look and be able to overlay things. So that way, if you're going to use them for other purposes, you can have those show up on your stream and you don't have to worry about it getting in, you know, having the weird square edges and whatnot. For pixel arts, definitely select square pixels. If you want to have that more clean anime look, you can kind of go for without that and do it all free. But I kind of like the pixels myself personally because I can really get in there and get all the little details, and it just seems a little bit more mathematical for me that way. So you can have that. Oh, let me get rid of this here. So when you're dealing with this, you can zoom in. If you have a tablet, you can go in there and start drawing whatever you want to do. For pixel art particularly, make sure you have the pencil tool selected, as that will make things a lot easier because it'll individually fill in and there's no anti-aliasing or any of that, and you can get exactly the kind of definition you want. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about animation. So I'm not going to teach you any drawing tips in this video. This is mostly just for information on how to use the program and what to do. So, let's say you draw a bunch of stuff, you get your things going, and now you have your individual frames. And so let's show you a little thing about what that might look like. So let's go down here to File, select Scripts, and go and select this Load Files into Stack option here. That's what you're going to want to do once you have your individual frames made up for your animation that you want to do. So then go ahead and hit Browse. And so here's like a little quick, simple animation line work that I did here. So we'll pull those up and then let Photoshop do its thing. It's going to go through, layer all those in, and then you're going to have all of these individual frames showing up in your area over here, which you can't quite see very well with my camera kind of blocking the way, but it's going to load them all in as individual layers. And so now you can see they're all here, they're all layered over the top of each other, and it looks like some strange amalgamation. So the next thing you're going to want to hit is go over to Window, select Timeline, and you're going to go Create Frame Animation. And then on this little screen, this is not very intuitive how they have this laid out, but there's a little 4-line, 3-line, whatever button right here in the top right corner of the timeline, and you're going to say Make Frames into Layers. And now it has it all laid out here. Now, for whatever reason, when you load them in, it generally always loads them in backwards. It does like the last one first. So if you want to change that, you just go over here and then hit reverse frames. There. So now we have the basics. So we have each of the frames that I've animated and done here. So you can kind of see how I go through the process. You get your subtle movements. You don't want to make too drastic of movements in each of your frames, but you don't also want to have way too many frames. Because speed and pacing is important. What is also important to remember is that you can have pauses and lingers, which I'll show you how to do here in a second, to kind of get things to look exactly how you want. Fast movements, obviously, you can kind of get away with a lot more, but that's how you control the speed. And make sure, keep your proportions. So when you're operating, when I was first drawing this, you create multiple layers. So for parts that are going to move around, like the head, I want to keep the eyes and the nose and everything positioned pretty much how I want them on the head. So I keep that all as one layer, and then you can move that. and keep other things like the neck here, the body in the background, or you can have the eyes be separate or the nose separate, so to speak, if you want to move that. And you'll notice as you go through this, the nose eventually, well, later on I'll show you the finished product. But eventually I decided to move the nose down a little bit as the head tilts to kind of keep perspective as well. So that's kind of the basics, but, you know, this isn't like a full animation. Like, you can kind of see how it plays out there. Very simple. And you can go through here and select any of these frames. Let's say I want to add a few more in here. I can go through and let's say I need a few more of these little bounces here. I could duplicate the frame, bring that over, take the next one, duplicate that, bring that over, and now we have this kind of deal. So you get an extra little shake in there. You can also go through and select these, and you can add a little bit of a delay to them. So that kind of changes the pacing of the certain parts of it. And you can have individual time skips on each of those, which is very useful and important for when you're trying to get your animation to look just right. So we'll go ahead and go over here to the finished product. So now you can see I've added quite a lot more frames in here. It's important to note when you're working with Twitch specifically, if you're uploading your animated emotes, you are limited to 60 frames, and file size is also a problem. So that's one of the main reasons I like to kind of stick with the pixels. So that way I have a limited color palette that saves on space. And also, you know, try not to make it a full 60 frames to kind of limit that size. So you can kind of see here now the whole animation. And if you notice, when his head goes down, the nose kind of spaces out a little bit further from the eyes. It's very subtle, but those little motions are very important. And then you can see like how the fur on the side of the head shakes and how the ears come up. So those little details help you a lot, but make sure you maintain proportions. So one of the things that you'll do when you're coloring and shading is, since you have the multiple layers when you're first making them, make one of the layers that you've completed transparent and then overlay that on top of your next animation so you can see how that transitions and keep an eye on your proportions and where all your colors are going. So the next thing is, now what do you want to do with this? So if you want to turn this in just a simple animated emote, once it's all done and you have it looking exactly the way that you want to, and you have the timing and everything correct, you would go down here to export, and you're going to want to select Save for Web Legacy. Save for Web Legacy will automatically convert it into a GIF, and you can select it to where it loops or doesn't. And then you can see it play here in a preview, and it also shows you your color palette. And there's some options in here you can kind of play around with, but for an emote, that's a pretty good way to do that. And then you just hit save, and then you're good. Some other examples here, like we have my eyeball emote. So we can say create frames from animation, and then we can go in here, make frames from layers. Oh, that's not the whole thing. Well, that's weird. Oh, but similar kind of process. It's missing some frames here. Oh, I see. That's only the pupil specifically. Another thing that I want to show you though is how to create a mp4 or .mov file, which is useful for some other things. So on your actual, like in OBS, when you're trying to create special effects or have like stinger transitions and whatnot, you're going to want some different file formats in order to make that work. So we'll go in here and we'll say load files into stack, and I'll bring up another one of my projects here and show you some neat tricks with that. So we'll go to my transition screen here, and we'll select the frames. We'll hit OK. Now this is going to take a minute here to load in, because this is higher resolution. This is a full 1080p. because this is supposed to be a full screen transition. So I stream in 1080p, so you want to do your artwork in 1080p as well, and have that be the same size of the screen, so there's no pixelation or blurring effects or things of that nature. So you hit create frame animation, again, go in here, select the make frames from layers. There you go. And you can come in here and make sure, oh, actually I don't need to reverse that. And then, if I want to have the full animation, where it closes and then opens back up, you go in, duplicate each of your frames to get the opposite effect. So we'll do that real quick just to kind of show you what that'll look like when it's all done. There we go. So now if I hit this, start over here, hit play, you can see the teeth come in, close, and open back up. But I don't like how fast that is in the center, because I want to have time for the actual screen transition. So I'll come over here to this one, and I'll put like a 2-second delay on this one specifically. So now when I go through, they'll go together, stay closed, and then open back up. And if I don't like that at 2 seconds, I can drop it down to 1 or whatever I want to do. There we go. See, that looks good. So now, I could upload this as a GIF, but then I'm not going to be able to use that as a stinger transition because they have to be an mp4 or .mov. And this GIF obviously far too big to be used as an emote, and I could potentially load it in to OBS and then have that be on a hotkey to play. And then you could, do whatever else you want and have that be, manually controlled. But if you want to automate the process, what you're going to need to do is go over here and click this little button down here in the bottom left corner. It says convert into video timeline. So now you're going to get this, and it's going to be zoomed way the hell out. So let's zoom that in down here with this little slider. And now I can see the frames. I can see the length. And you can also go in and add sound effects down here in this audio track, which is really awesome that Photoshop has this feature. It's kind of like your one-stop shop for basically creating just about anything animation-wise. So I can go in here, click this little button, I can say add audio, and then you can go and find, whatever sounds you want to use, you want to create, and you can add those in. And then those will pop up down here. If you grab this little blue slider here, you can go in and make cuts. So I can say like, oh, this sound file is longer than my animation is. But I kind of want the sound to linger a little bit afterwards. So I'll come over here and then you can hit the little scissors, chop that, select the excess, hit delete, boom, there you go. So now you have sound in your video as well. And what's important here now with this particular one, with this animation that I have here, you'll notice it has a transparent background. So if I upload this as an mp4, that transparency is going to go away because mp4 file format does not support alpha channels. This was what you need in a video format in order to have that transparency. Keep in mind that having a alpha channel in a video is going to greatly increase the file size. So it might be a little harder to transfer that file around or do things with, and it'll take up a lot more space. But what you're going to want to hit is render video here. So when you first have this selected, it's going to have this, and this is going to save it as an mp4 as the default OpenGL. And you can do that, especially if you have like a full animation or if you're just doing like a bunch of pictures or something that you're turning into like a little movie or whatnot. But if you want that transparency to have that overlay go over and not cover up the entire screen or have like a jarring like switch or flash, you're going to want to select QuickTime, and then you're going to go down here to Render Options, Alpha Channel, and you're going to want to hit Straight Unmatted. And this will create the transparency that you need in your video file in order for it to overlay correctly on your layout. And then you just hit render, and then you have the video. And so those are some interesting little options there in Photoshop to keep in mind for when you're trying to make things for your channel and how to do that in case you didn't know. And we can go over some of my specific animation techniques and how I made some of these projects later at another point if people are interested. But I've had a lot of questions about how I make this stuff, so I just wanted to create this video, put that out there so you all can see the step-by-step process of how that gets done. And I hope that helps. um, and yeah, we'll leave you with the little laughing wolf. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.